Welcome to Nourishing Grief, where we talk about support the way we talk about food. We'll try new things, we'll have our go-tos. Sometimes we need something small, and sometimes we need the full three courses. So welcome, Tom. It's great to have you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right, Maddie. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, feeling
My
good.
pleasure. Yeah, really excited to have this conversation with you. And I think we'll get warmed up with our comfort meal. If that's all right with you.
Sure.
So what is your go-to comfort meal? The one that feels like a hug, or, just something that takes you back to a place where you feel really safe and secure?
So my comfort meal is going to have to be my mum's Sunday roast, which is not, it's like I sort of 14, 15 sides with it. So we go all out properly. I'm from Newcastle, so it's a sort of a northern roast, and it's every meat with Yorkshire puddings. It's mashed potato, roast potatoes, swede, peas and corn, green beans, cabbage, cauliflower cheese, carrots, parsnips, stuffing,
Yes.
sausages, and then like she puts like roasts the bacon on top of the meat, so then it's crispy bacon, and then gravy and Yorkshires, and like it's very much a kind of a meal that sort of centers around kind of sort of Sundays growing up and the feeling of safety. And I think kind of it's a nice sort of thing that I now do with my wife and my little girl. Kind of I make the roast, and I really like kind of like that transferring of that. It feels like a really lovely thing to kind of have every Sunday that we do. And yeah, it's just a real sort of comforting thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I think as you were talking about it, it kind of reminded me of, like, with all of the sides, it's kind of having the sides, or to me, represent kind of having your community around you. And
Yeah.
I was also thinking at the same time that it also, like, when you were saying about the stuffing and the Yorkshire puddings, I was like, that reminds me of being like wrapped up in bed. And just like, can you imagine sitting in like a giant Yorkshire pudding and just,
Creamy.
oh, unreal.
There's all those like Yorkshire pudding wraps now you can get as well, isn't there? You can at all the food markets and things, like you can have it all in one, like it's like a burrito, Yorkshire pudding burrito.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of my friends will come, if they come up for when I was sort of younger, they come round. It was always like Tom's mum's Sunday roast was like a Christmas dinner, and it was sort of weird that we would have Christmas dinner every Sunday. Well, everyone else just focuses on it once a year. Always Christmas dinner for at Sal's house.
And just shifting the tone slightly towards your stepdad, what is a meal or a food item that reminds you of him? If you wouldn't mind telling us.
Rob, my stepdad, was very much in the cook in our house. So my mum would do the Sunday lunch, and that was her thing. But apart from that, Rob cooked every other meal. So I kind of grew up with Rob as head chef, which was kind of brilliant, because I think a lot of people kind of mum is the cook, and it was really nice to kind of have dad as the cook, stepdad as the cook. And he was a real believer of spice. I mean, spicy foods, chilies. I mean, to the point of where, I mean, any spicy sauce where you'd have like nosebleeds because it was so spicy, and he'll be going at it, and you'd be like, "What are you doing, man?" But he loved it. And I think he was a big curry maker. He made loads of curry. I mean, it wasn't his spiciest dish, but his butter chicken was just absolutely out of this world.
Wow.
And it was such a special meal that we probably have it once a month, but it was just delicious and creamy, and the textures of the meat were right. And he would sort of slow cook it, and he would sometimes make it the night before and then sort of add things to it. And the detail of his cooking was, nothing was ever half done. So we always had a really fresh meal every night, which was really special. And it was something, I think, is kind of, he was a doctor, so I think with busy lives and stuff, it was kind of his therapy almost. And it was things quite sort of scientific. So sort of the playing with the recipes and playing with spice textures and things were amazing. Yeah. We used to have where I grew up, we had a local Indian restaurant as well called the Mughal Raj, and we used to go there quite frequently as well. And that's sort of like a fried curry. And he would always get the staff curry, which was the sort of the spiciest and
Yeah.
higher life. So, and they were always so excited when he came in, sort of like, "Raw,
Of that.
sweating with whatever the hell they were giving him, and not knowing A, what the meat was, and B, what the spice level was, and just kind of going with it. And so yeah, his butter chicken's definitely like the meal, but curries in general are really kind of were him. And when I got married, when we talked about our sort of like meals for the sort of the 3 courses, and my wife's heritage is Indo-Guyanese, so there's a lot of curry and Caribbean
Oh.
influence there. So we sort of wanted to almost take that plus sort of honor him and have curry. So we actually had a lovely restaurant in Newcastle called Dabowel cater it, and we had, I mean, a wedding with
Oh,
loads.
wow.
So curry in general is just kind of really him.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. I think that that also speaks to his how he expressed himself. Correct me if I'm wrong, but while I was thinking that I find when I'm cooking, like I love experimenting and like just chucking random stuff in, and I really can relate to kind of the expressionism, especially as he probably worked quite a restrictive job being a doctor. There's not much room for self-expression in the medical industry, as someone who works kind of adjacent to it. So yeah, that's really beautiful, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Which brings us fabulously on to the support menu. So we are so flavorful with food. We experiment, we have favorites. Sometimes we need toast, sometimes we want 3 courses, but with support, we don't always give ourselves the same permission.
No.
So if support was a menu, what would yours be? Should we start with the starters?
Yeah. So I sort of, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking kind of, because starter always feels kind of like you really want to set yourself up right. If you pick a bad starter, then the rest of the meal is going to go wrong. So the starter's got to feel like it's a really good choice.
Yeah.
And I'm a writer by day a lot of the time, and I find writing is the best thing for everything really: self-expression, getting down your feelings, telling a story, communicating. It's a really, really lovely way of putting your thoughts down on paper. And when I write, I do a lot of free writing where you have a timer, you give yourself 5 minutes and you just write. So your pen can't leave the page. So it doesn't matter what you say. It's just about the actual impetus of writing something. What I find with writing is that it really kind of clears the air, and it makes you put things down, and then you can look at the thing and go like, this is what this is. And with specifically when dealing with kind of the loss of someone to suicide, I found writing really helpful. I found writing on a spectrum of ways as well, kind of writing a letter to my stepdad. I wrote him a number of letters that were in different lengths. You know, sometimes it was to Rob, a rude word, best Tom, and then other times it was telling him a story or telling about something that had happened, or annoyed at him because he'd missed my wedding, or the myth. I mean, I wrote him one recently when my daughter was born because I really wanted to tell him about her. But then there's also the versions of kind of, your feelings and just kind of how you're feeling that day and kind of that stuff.
I completely relate. I also write a lot down. I have a notebook, but then my notes app is kind of where I go to shout into my notebook sometimes. Sometimes I'll write things to him if I'm out and about and don't have my notebook, but I quite often write to Joe. I can completely relate to the saying a rude word and then just closing it off, because sometimes quite a lot of the time when you've lost someone to suicide, you are obviously devastated to have lost them, but you're also quite angry with them because how dare they leave you, or how dare they do this, and being able to write down those feelings that are actually quite complicated all of the time and see them in black and white ink, it's almost like you're able to rationalize them a bit and see them in their kind of full state, rather than have it all kind of rushing around in your head and, oh no, but I shouldn't be angry, I should be sad, and if you can just get it out and put it on paper and then close the book most of the time, then yeah, that's really helpful and healthy as well. But yes, well, I think that's a brilliant starter, and a great way to start us off on the menu. If we move on to something, I don't want to say substantial, because I think writing is substantial. I think all of these things are substantial. But if we think about kind of your main go-to, the thing that you've relied on maybe the most, or kind of laid, I suppose, the foundations of your support, or something you can always return to and you know it's going to fill you up.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, my main is walking, actually, and walking and big walks, kind of going out and doing a day of walking, whether that's with yourself or with your other half or friends, but but even by yourself, like a walk, what I'm able to do on a walk for myself is, I don't know how or why, but it just, everything that I can be frustrated with and upset with I can almost have a conversation with myself. And by the end of the walk, I feel like, oh, I've dealt with that. I can then get back to what I need to be. And when I was sort of thinking about this, and we were talking when I was talking to Will before about kind of what would my main course be, I was like, well, it's something that I use now, not only with regards to sort of suicide grief, but also now being a new parent, like all the frustrations around the amazement of having this little girl look at me, and now it's like I love the walks with her. So I'm happy to do the naps and the walk in the buggy, because it's an hour of kind of decompression. It's kind of allow environments and spaces just to take over, and you kind of just get lost in a world of, and that can be with headphones on, listening to music, listening to a podcast, or just with your own thoughts. But I can't say it enough that a walk is just as good exercise as a run. If you're doing a long day, it gives you just as much endorphins, but it also is a really lovely thing to do socially, especially if you're having to have potentially conversations about how you're feeling with friends. Because again, an activity of doing something makes it so much easier to have the conversations. And I remember when Rob died, I couldn't get over how amazing my friends were. Like, they were just incredible, like showing up in ways that I'd never could have imagined. And all of us went for walks. So it was always one of the boys would come round, and we'd, let's go. And we'd go and get a coffee, and then we'd just walk for 2 hours, and we'd have full conversations about things. And I would be able to be very open, but it was allowed that to happen. And so, yeah, my main course is walking, walk.
I love that. I think that's really beautiful, and that is a great way to move on to our dessert, or our pudding, as we say in the South. But yes, so a comfort tool, something that feels kind, something that's nice and sweet, or just something that rounds off the meal and just kind of completes the puzzle.
Yeah, I think that something that we really forget to do in this first year is to enjoy ourselves, and enjoy ourselves with something that we really love doing. And I kind of see dessert as it is a sweet treat. You're right. Like, it's kind of something and it's something that you don't have all the time, or sometimes it's seen as a luxury. I mean, my favorite dessert in the world is apple crumble and custard. Like, it's just this really amazing.
So good.
Yeah, the best. And so for me, dessert is a gift to yourself, and that can be in the form of a trip to the cinema, go and see, go to the football match that you really want to go to the theatre, go to that gallery, go sit in that cafe that you love and order that coffee that you would never order. Go and something that can it's an event, an experience for yourself. That's something that's just really, it's good and it's nice. And whatever that is for you, from whatever your interests are, if you're, anything and everything is open in that way. But we're not kind to ourselves in that first year. We get really cross at ourselves because we're constantly asking the question, how didn't I know that was on their mind? How could I have stopped it? How could I have done more? You're constantly berating yourself and getting upset with yourself because of those things. And so if there's an opportunity for you to just go into a dark room and watch a film for 2 hours with a huge popcorn and a big drink, then go and do it. Like, that is, it doesn't take the pain away, but it's like dessert is there for the in the moment experience, and something maybe you can talk about afterwards as well. And so in the same vein, an event or experience that you can do for yourself that doesn't feel too overwhelming is my definition of what a dessert for this sort of thing should be.
Tom, I have loved hearing your menu. I feel like this has been a really great chat. And thank you so much for sharing so openly and honestly. I love that your stepdad was the cook. I love his love of curries, and the fact that he would have the staff curry is just brilliant. I will never be that brave. I don't think I know anyone that brave. And I have really enjoyed this chat. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Maddie. Thank you for having me, and thank you for sharing all your stuff too. It's been lovely to hear about your brother, and he sounded like a very special person.
He was, thank you, and your stepdad, Rob. So yeah, if today's menu has resonated with anyone listening, maybe try adding one of Tom's starter, main course, dessert or side to your own support menu.